We're going to kick off with Cyril Ramaphosa's last hurrah, his last great moment, the G20. The G20 summit takes place. How do we know? We know because our one working fighter jet has been buzzing all over Gauteng for the last couple of days. I hope it makes it to the end of the weekend. Is impressive. And I'm sure that that's going to deter Botswana from attacking us, or whoever else would attack us. I'm sure that one jet will keep us safe. But here we are, Cyril Ramaphosa doing his lap of honor, president of the world, and lapping it up. And to the end, the drama between South Africa and the USA continues. And boy, has this been a soap opera of our own making. Now, Donald Trump couldn't have been any clearer when he said he's not sending anybody to participate in the summit. But there is the embarrassing part that the US is the next host of the G20 summit, which happens, in the US next year. And there's meant to be, like a la the Olympics, some kind of handing over ceremony. And it would be quite awkward if you're handing it over to an empty chair. So the US decided to spare Cyril Ramaphosa the embarrassment, although he's used to selling imaginary stuff because he sold those imaginary cars to the imaginary investor. So he's quite accustomed to dealing with imaginary people. But this would be quite awkward because you've got the whole world's leaders in the room, except for a quarter of them, and you're going to be handing over to nobody. So America said that what they're going to do is they're going to send their charge d'affaires. We love these French words. Makes our politicians feel very important. Better known as the Deputy Ambassador to South Africa, Mark Dillard, to be there on the last day to kind of accept the baton from Cyril Ramaphosa. What followed was a usual South African spectacle that we've grown to know and to love, and that is when we celebrate wins that aren't wins. We do recall when, what was her name, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma wanted to be head of the AU, and she lost the vote, and her party didn't quite understand numbers because we were going through that phase in South Africa when we weren't very good at numbers, celebrating a draw as a win. Oh dear. We also saw Bafana celebrating a draw, which they thought would get them into AFCON a few years back. In actual fact, they needed a win. So they were dancing and partying, but in actual fact, we hadn't achieved what we got to. So we did another political version of it, and that was that a giggling, happy, elated Cyril Ramaphosa was saying, we've won, we've triumphed over the US. They've finally seen the sense of this, and they're going to participate in my whole masturbatory process. Cyril saying that South Africa is not a country to be bullied, but we've received notice that the US has changed their minds and they will be participating in the summit. Whereas all the US has said was, we're going to send a minor diplomat at the end just to say that, we'll take over from here. Thank you very much.
We have received notice from the United States, a notice which we are still in discussions with them over, about a change of mind about participating in one shape, form, or other in the summit. So the discussions are still ongoing. This comes really at the late hour before the summit begins. And so therefore we do need to engage in those types of discussions to see how practical it is and what it finally really means.
The United States is not participating in official talks at the G20 in South Africa. I saw the South African president running his mouth a little bit against the United States and the president of the United States earlier today, and that language is not appreciated by the president or his team. The ambassador or the representative of the embassy in South Africa is simply there to recognize that the United States will be the host of the G20. They are receiving that send-off at the end of the event. They are not there to participate in official talks, despite what the South African president is falsely claiming.
In true Cyril tradition, he said, "This is a very positive sign. As I've often said, boycott politics will never work." He was there now lecturing the US. It's always best, I love this one, to be inside the tent rather than outside the tent. This is the famous Lyndon Johnson statement. But needless to say, he missed the fun part of that statement, which is you'd rather have people inside the tent pissing out rather than outside the tent pissing in. We're grown people. You can say what you want to say. Now, this coming from the man who says that boycott politics doesn't work, who's famous for managing boycott politics when the old South Africa was boycotted, which brought South Africa to the negotiating table, proving that boycott politics does work. Right? This is a president who currently supports a boycott of Israel. So I'm not sure which boycott Cyril Ramaphosa is unhappy with, but quite clearly, he likes boycott policies when he likes it, and he doesn't like it when he doesn't like it. So, the US, of course, responded through their spokesperson, Caroline Levitt, saying that nobody is going to go and participate in this summit, and the South African president has been running his mouth, which just sort of shows that for as long as Donald Trump is in the White House, South Africa better become a better country to deal with, or else these relationships are not going to improve. But Cyril's on a roll. Cyril is in charge, large and in charge. And we would understand this solution. South Africa's got a disgraceful problem amongst many of our problems. We know how bad our crime problem is because this same President Ramaphosa went to America to say, we have got out of control crime, therefore we're not committing a genocide. I mean, a dirty little secret is more people were murdered in South Africa in the last 3 years than died in Gaza. Let that sink in for a while. We invested in a whole ICJ case against Israel because of Gaza. But more people will have been murdered in South Africa since October the 7th. Then what, in that period of time, more people have been murdered in this country than have died in Gaza. It's quite incredible. But anyway, let's not let the facts get in the way. One of the worst parts of our crime epidemic is gender-based violence. Something we should hang our heads in shame about. That Charlize Theron was making ill-informed adverts a decade ago about there being no real men in South Africa because of the amount of rape, abuse, and murder of women in this country. So Cyril, always the man looking for the solution, has solved gender-based violence. He's given it a new name. It's now no longer gender-based violence, it's now femicide, which of course is incorrect. Because femicide implies the murder of women, that's just one part of it. It doesn't cover the trauma of rape and abuse. And he's upgraded this from being a problem to being a national disaster. Now, I don't know about you, but national disasters are usually acts of God, volcanoes, earthquakes, etc. This is very much man-made. This isn't a disaster we didn't see coming. This is a disaster that's been with us for 20 years, if not more. And it comes from a mix of toxic masculinity and no consequences in South Africa. I'd like to remind everybody that we had a deputy minister, Mduduzi Manana, who was at that point deputy minister of higher education. It's always that department, who was caught on video beating a woman thoroughly outside the Cubana restaurant in Johannesburg in 2017. He wasn't even fired. He was redeployed. He stayed on as a member of parliament. And even when the ANC decided to do something about it, what did they do? They made sure he wasn't charged. And now he works in the ANC as their head of organizing. He works inside Luthuli House. This is the national disaster being handled by the ANC. If this is a national disaster, then one would imagine that, I don't know, bombs fell from the sky or something that just destabilized and made our policing the mess that the Madlanga Commission shows that it is. This isn't national disaster stuff. This is just bad governance. It was done by the people elected to run policing properly. Let's not forget that it is a cornerstone of what a government is meant to do, which is to keep your country safe. As the saying goes, the government is meant to have the monopoly on violence. In South Africa, we've got strict gun laws, so we can't really have vigilantism, supposed to be. And it's up to the government to run policing properly. But look at the mess we've got. Just let's look at Cyril Ramaphosa's appointments as his 3 police ministers. He inherited Nathi Mthethwa, who was part of State Capture 1.0, and rather than appear before the Madlanga Commission, decided to jump out of a window. That just shows how innocent he is. We heard Becky Cele, who, let's not forget, was fired for stealing money from the state in a very, very dodgy office deal when he was Commissioner of Police, and explain how good it was to stay in Kat Matlala's house and to meet at Hangwani Maumela's villa down in Belito. And then, of course, his previous, currently suspended police minister, Senzo Mkhunu, who has been suspended because he ran a dirty police service. This doesn't sound like a national disaster to me. We know that gender-based violence is fueled by the terrible economic situation that we have, that leaves a nation hungry, hopeless, and humiliated. Especially men who are meant to be the providers and who are so frustrated, not to give them any reason to do it, resort to gender-based violence, probably just after they resort to alcoholism, because of the hopelessness that our current economic situation gives us. Right? We need an economy that works, that can employ people to keep them busy, that give people a purpose in life. Instead, what have we got? We've got in our cabinet ministers like Gwede Mantashe, who was fingered in the Zondo Commission for corruption. Thembi Simelane, remember her? When her corruption was uncovered, she was moved from one portfolio to another. She's now the Minister of Human Settlements. That robs South Africa of money, which robs us of economic growth, which leads to more desperation amongst people and worse behavior. We're not even get about the accusations that are still going to have to face criminal charges against Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, and just generally the bad performance of some of the ministers. In Parliament, we see the spectacle of having Zweli Mkhize, the man, the digital vibes man, when he was being touted as a future president, literally stealing state money through his mates, through giving them contracts. And now he's still in Parliament. On the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee looking into the mess that is policing, we've got Kuselo Diko, now Kusela Sangoni, who was working in the office of the president while her husband was stealing COVID money. Suspend her for a while and then redeploy her. Not fire her, not stop this nonsense, not become intolerant to corruption. So this disaster that Cyril Ramaphosa talks about is not a disaster at all. It's a conscious decision. So by calling gender-based violence femicide and upgrading it to a national disaster may sound like you're doing something, much like the phrase the war room. It means that we're going to sit in there's going to be drumming in the background, there's going to be a lot of very serious people making decisions, these things have led to nothing. Right? It sounds like we're doing something, but you're only doing something when you're doing something, and we're doing nothing. So to give it a new name might get Cyril a few headlines in the next day or so, but it's meaningless. And I want to now turn to the Madlanga Commission that I was scathing about because we had the spectacle of Mary de Haas looking like a bewildered old woman at the parliamentary committee, and Brown Mogotsi looking like the world's most unreliable human being, never mind just witness, at the Madlanga Commission. Well, yesterday, Brown Mogotsi's madness got mauled at the Madlanga Commission. Evidence leader Matthew Chaskelson, with some help from the commissioners, Sisi Baloy, Justice Madlanga himself, tore Makhotsi apart. His lies finally caught up with him, and this guy seems to be on a short move to jail. Right? His unrealistic stories were shredded. I mean, here's a whopper. He claimed to have joined and was trained in Umkhonto weSizwe, not the new Ackerman's version of Umkhonto weSizwe that's now a political party, but when it was sort of an army sort of thing. Now, Umkhonto weSizwe was disbanded in 1993, and now Makhotsi claims that he was there, trained by them as an operative. As one of the commissioners pointed out, that would have made him 13 years old when Umkhonto weSizwe was disbanded. How could he have received the training? What was his explanation for that? Home Affairs has got his age wrong. He's actually 6 years older than his ID document says he is. And this guy is a beauty. What seems to be the crazy part is that senior politicians like Minister Senzo Mkhunu, senior policemen like General Shadrack Sibiya, criminal masterminds like Kat Matlala, who run, in each case, huge organizations, all put their trust in this idiot. I mean, it's no less than they deserve. That here they were all conspiring through one central hub named Brown Mogotsi, and the guy is a professional liar. So good luck that we found a guy like this. But what did they want out of this relationship? What is becoming absolutely clear from the commissions was that for different reasons, the minister, Mkhunu, General Sibiya, Kat Matlala, for different reasons, all wanted this investigation into Kat Matlala, Katiso Molefe, etc., to fall apart. There were two ways they wanted to do that. They needed criminal intelligence, crime intelligence, which we don't have a lot of. One person who seemed to be doing a modicum of crime intelligence was Dumisani Khumalo, but he had erred in this HR matter. They had to get him arrested and out of the way, and then you take the final hammer to the machine, and that was to disband the political killings task team. Whichever way you slice it, as bad a witness as Makhotsi has been, it's showing by way of communication, phones, WhatsApp messages, etc., that all of these parties were not doing this for any other reason, but they were trying to protect crime and criminals at the cost of you and I, the taxpayer. And it's being picked apart. People are going to go to jail. There seem to be two areas that people are going to get nailed. One was, we've dealt with it extensively, the whole rot in Ekurhuleni, which will lead to criminal charges. Why? Because those are minor people, they're expendable, they will go to jail. There's no doubt about it. And here we've got this nexus and the decision-making in disbanding the political killings task team, not because it was some great organization, but because they literally were about to put away criminals that were funding policemen and funding politicians. Everybody was in on it at the same time. This thing's going to wind down quite quickly, and that's where it's going to leave us. The sadness is we're never going to hear much about the very senior politicians who must have known about this, i.e. the president, and he seems to be doing everything within his power to protect Mngwani Maumela. It's a pity, but it's something is something. Thank you so much for joining us on The Political Insider. Subscribe to the channel. We need as many people subscribed as possible, and ring the bell so that you can get all the notifications. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you again soon.